So welcome everyone to our panel session. Thank you for joining and thanks to the Financial Inclusion Week for hosting our discussion. My name is Mabel Bejarano and I'm the Global Technical Advisor for Women's Empowerment and Savings Groups at Global Communities. And I will be the moderator of this panel. So savings and lending groups serve as a vital pathway for increasing financial inclusion among the unbanked, who we know are mostly women. We know that emerging digital financial technologies are changing the landscape for savings and lending groups and the financial service providers that engage with them. Members and practitioners are increasingly using digital tools to manage group records, to conduct financial transactions, and to promote access to formal finance. However, is digitalization able to reach everyone? Who has been left behind? And who, for example, how do, for example, gender, age, literacy, numeracy levels affect participation? So we hope to have a rich conversation today and answer some of these questions. So before I introduce our panelists, I want to tell you briefly about Global Communities and our work with village and savings groups. We are a global NGO. We work in more than 30 countries, and our mission is to bring together local ingenuity and global insights to save lives, advance equity, and secure strong futures. And we achieve this mission in collaboration with public and private sector partners, including the communities affected by poverty, disaster, and conflict as well. And so at Global Communities, we have an initiative called Women Empowered. And Women Empowered promotes the empowerment of women through the formation of self-managed savings groups or village savings and loans associations, as they are normally called in the sector. And to date, the Women Empowered program has supported more than 10,000 savings groups, reaching over 250,000 people who are mostly women. We have 89% of our participants are women. We have worked across 15 countries in the Americas and the Sub-Saharan Africa region. And so savings groups are small groups of people who save together to borrow from their pool savings. Savings groups provide members the opportunity to save frequently in small amounts, to access credit on flexible terms, and also a basic form of insurance. Savings groups are owned, managed, and operated by their members. They are by design financially and institutionally sustainable, and they continue to operate independently after the training period, which is normally 9 to 12 months. For millions of unbanked people in emerging markets, informal savings groups serve as their primary bank and social safety net. So savings groups are widely promoted by hundreds of NGOs, funders, governments. For instance, by the end of 2021, the SIP network estimated that there were at least 1 million of such savings groups worldwide, comprised of 20 million members. And globally, 80% of members of savings groups are women. And many programs are intentionally designed and implemented to narrow the persistent gender gap in financial inclusion. Savings groups. So across the globe, savings groups are increasingly using digital solutions such as digital ledgers and wallets to help manage group records, to conduct financial transactions using mobile money instead of cash. And so this has led to the emergence of digital savings groups. And so what are digital savings groups? So a digital savings group is a group which procedures, records, or transactions are digitized some way, typically through the use of mobile phones. Digital transformation has the potential to accelerate benefits of savings groups for marginalized groups by expanding their digital identities and bringing the gap to formal financial services. It may also help facilitate their participation in formal economy. And on the other hand, digitalization happens in a world of a persistent gender digital divide, where women's access to and use of mobile technologies are constrained by rigid gender norms, unequal power dynamics, and resource limitations. At Global Community, we began working with digital savings groups in 2019 in Tanzania, and then we expanded to Ethiopia in 2021. Um, and we also co-created an online learning and community platform that it's working to facilitate effective, safe, and inclusive digitalization of savings groups. And this is called the DSG Hub. I welcome you to check their website and join the community. And so the evaluation of our pilot project and the subsequent gender analysis that we conducted in partnership with Women for Women International in Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Rwanda helped us understand that digitalization can have both positive and also negative consequences for the ability of women and marginalized groups to participate to lead and benefit from savings groups. So this session will facilitate the debate among financial inclusion practitioners about the implications of digitalization in savings and lending groups. And we will share experiences, some evidence, and we explore the related needs, adaptations, and also what are some of the unsolved challenges for promoting financial inclusion. So let me introduce our panelists. Finally, we have Innocent Mfinganga, who is the Sustainable Markets and Livelihoods Advisor at PACT, and he's based in Tanzania. Hi, Innocent. We have David Meyer, who is the Director of Partnerships, and he's the co-founder of Mayoral Village, and he's based in Toronto, Canada. And we have Koen de Beer. He's the project manager at Ciclos, I'm sorry, and he's based in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And so I'm going to ask each panelist to share very briefly about their work, how they engage with savings groups, and very briefly. And so let's start with Innocent, and then we turn it over to our other panelists.
Great. Thanks a lot, Mabel, and hi, colleagues. So I'll walk you through a bit of a quick story on how PACT we have been working with saving groups to date. So we've been working with the saving groups for more than 25 years or so right now, and we are basically working through a VSLA approach called WEalth, where women's aging from 15 to 24, they meet in groups made up of 5 to 30. They do their meetings where basically they conduct basic saving structures, they take loans out of those savings, and we have some additional financial literacy trainings embedded into those group meetings. So we've been having this model for quite a while, but as pioneering and trying to emerge ourselves the digital trend, we have been able to add a tool that digitalized the whole operations of the wealth model. Next slide, please, Mabel. So in light of that digitalization, we had been able to look on the wealth model and identify some of the pain gaps in terms of how they do their saving structure on a paper-based model. And then being able to have developers coming in and develop an Android application that digitize their whole saving operations. So we do have a tool called My Wealth app, which is basically the digital button go to our saving structure, where these members, they could meet and within a touch of a button, they could do whole of their saving structure. They could queue for loan, they could process loans, they could be able to have access to certified credit histories because of their queued savings transactions each weekly. But also we tried to address some of the pain gaps that we did seen from the paper-based modality, such as a bit of challenges when it comes to accessing on records because they're using books, but also it's a bit hard reaching out to financial institutions and accessing credits because of their record. They're not transacted. They're not accredited for credit score and so forth. So this tool has been around for more than 4 years right now. We have been able to implement part of this tool in 2 or 3 countries: Tanzania, Zambia, and Eswatini. We've been able to reach more than 2,000 users, and we have been evolving it over time with adding more features around language and so forth. So just to position all these discussions in terms of how we work with our saving groups, specifically the digital saving groups. So I could focus your attention on the main portion there, which addresses the strengthening economic support that the web application does. So the app itself is embedded with features that provide the users leading into 2 paths, either as for those who want to go an entrepreneurship path, being able to employ themselves, but for those who want to navigate the job market in terms of having soft skills, prepare themselves for addressing how to be employed, how to behave around work, and so forth. Since we have an e-learning module embedded through the web application. So Patch has an experience with DSG, but also VSLA in general, and we are happy to share more insight with you guys. And you have our web application to interact with you. Thank you, Mabel. I'll pause for now.
Thank you. Thank you, Innocent. So now let me turn it over to David. David, we cannot hear you.
Thank you. My apologies. Myora Village works with people who have very poor or no skills in terms of writing and reading numbers. And imagine if you were unable to read or write numbers, to decode the numbers that surround you in life, particularly financial numbers, such as you might find in your savings group, passbooks, loan statements, and transactions when you go to receive or to send remittances. You lack what we call financial numeracy. That is the skills that you need to carry out financial transactions with complete understanding, security, and to do so in real time. Next, please. Next, please. Thank you. So we have an innovation which we call oral information management, which is a methodology that allows us to work with people with limited or no skills in terms of reading and writing numbers to design solutions for them so that they can use financial products, whether it's a passbook or a loan form or whatever. We dialogue with them to gather images that can replace the text that fills up their screens or fills up their paper passbooks with images that guide them to handle and record the transactions. But whatever we do is also something that literate people can use. So it's really for everybody. We test them locally, they reflect local conditions, and with them, we are able to help people safely and effectively record numbers. Next, please. And we also back this up with a digital tool we call the Orali Table Cash Calculator. It's based on the fundamental insight for our work, which is that people who cannot read and write numbers nevertheless can handle money. If you've been into any kind of street market where people are selling goods and such to you, you know that you give them some money, they give you the correct change. Sometimes they need to count it 2 or 3 times, but generally they know how to handle money. Their problem is being able to understand it when it's written down on paper or appears on a small smartphone screen. Next, please. And this Orali Table Cash Calculator is something that allows them to translate cash, which they know how to handle because it has different sizes, colors, images, to put that up on what we call the cash table and convert that into an Indo-Arabic numeric string. So they put up the notes for, say, 725 Ethiopian birr, and they also will have in the upper right-hand corner that translated into what would be recorded on a screen or in a book. It's visual, it's touch, we can localize it to every country, and it does not require a data connection once it's been downloaded onto a tablet or onto a smartphone. So be happy to discuss any of this with you at greater length in the Q&A, and also if you send me a message. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So let's turn it over to Koen.
Hi, everybody. We have been working with the digitalization of financial services for communities since about 20 years with the Cyclus platform. That was a time that when very few people talked about digitalization. Now, a lot has changed in 20 years. Of course, there is more internet connection. Technology has changed as well. So I hope you remember the big cell phones, and now we have nice small smartphones. There's blockchain, which is another discussion. So we as well had to reinvent all over time and rebuild our software a few times. Projects we attended were mostly grassroots projects of organizations who tried to digitalize something, and then when they were successful, it was going bottom up. Now today with COVID, we've seen a very dramatic or drastically change because it's become a global agenda and has become a priority. So it's now going top down. So we had to adjust as well to this. So we created a money platform which actually promotes Cyclus tools for financial inclusion. That's why money is written with an E, is for inclusion. And the savings group was first project, and we tried to build it as flexible as possible because we have learned that different organizations promote different methodologies, so we had to adjust to these methodologies. Secondly, we wanted to be a white label. It's not about us, it's about the people, the communities, so it's not our brand, that's why it's white label. And we're now launching the Cyclus, the offline, which works actually offline during the whole cycle. It can work like that. Only when there is share out, there's the need for internet connection. So technically it can go a long way. The layout is also totally different now. It's has been very simple. We work with a lot of images and or icons, so people don't have to be very literate to use the software. If you have problems with reading, you can still use the application. So we hope this will be a tool that can make a contribution to financial inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Koen. It's great to see how the different focus that you all have, how you all relate with digital when with savings groups and the different approaches, the different objectives that you all have. So this is bringing together a very diverse panel from different perspectives. I really like that. Thank you very much. So let's jump into the questions. So our first discussion question is, who is digitalization of community-based savings and lending groups? Who is leaving behind? What are some of the negative implications of digitalization for marginalized groups, such women, for example, or people in low-income communities? So let's hear first from Koen.
Okay. We see digitalization in two directions. The first one is the digitalization of already existing savings groups to digital. Now, some of them will make that step, and others will make that step and will drop out because there are technical reasons. You need internet. So if you don't have, at some point, you need internet to load up the data. Secondly, you need, as group resources, you need the most commonly used tool is a smartphone, so you need to buy a smartphone, which is a nice investment. And there are, of course, also social and cultural reasons, such as gender, but also the lack of confidence and trust in technology. Because one thing is we trust our group members to treat our money, but then another thing is there's a third party which is invisible, which treats our data. So that's also something which has to be built, the trust. The second direction is with digital tools, can we tend much more or form and support much more savings groups. And of course, we expect that it will be like that because there are benefits for groups. For organizations, it will be cheaper in the medium run to support groups. You don't have to go to the field to collect data. And there will be more money coming in because we make a digital footprint of all these people which can access those financial services. So there will be more money coming in. But then at the end, there will still be people left out. And that will be first for technology reasons. If you don't have internet, if you can't afford a smartphone, you will be left out of this process. The people, and I think David and Vincent will talk more about that, who have already difficulties to join a savings group today, they will have more difficulties to join a savings group, a digital savings group. And then the last one is that there are people who qualify for a traditional savings group today, but they are not attended because of the lack of resources. Because now the focus will be only on digital savings groups, they will be left behind. Because they might not make it to a digital savings group, but they could be part of a traditional savings group. But because we're focusing on digital, then they will be left behind. So actually, it's always the same people, which are remote people who live in remote areas, elderly people, illiterate people, and then as well women, of course. So these are the ones who will have more difficulties. Thank you.
Thank you, Koen. So let's hear from Innocent. Innocent.
Yes, thanks a lot, Mabel, and thanks, Koen, for such a comprehensive response. So just to add up a bit to that, iterating what Koen already said, in terms of people, I think one of the people who will be left also behind is around the gender dynamics or gender paradigms. So mostly women, as Koen said, with experience working with the MyWealth application in Tanzania and Eswatini, there's a bit of a challenge when introducing a digital platform and how it could reach out to women. Most of the householding, they have gender dynamics and gender settings that sometimes women are not allowed to own and operate smartphones. They're supposed to be owned and operated by their husbands or married within a compound. So these gender issues, they really have to be taken into concern when we try to advance the gender, the digital advancement in terms of financial inclusions. But also, one other key factor that I think most platforms left out is the people with disabilities. So you could find out most of the platforms and technology tools developed right now, they tend to overlook accessibility concerns when it comes to people with disability. So most of the websites, apps, they're not designed in a sense where people with certain disability, either blind or hearing and so forth, would have an easy access to them. And they tend to be left out with the whole digital trend and digitalization process. So those two factors really take into concern. And another one that we have noted as we're working with the Maasai culture in Arusha is the language and cultural barriers. So you could find some of the communities, they're coming from those very minority groups where some of their language they cannot be properly translated, but also they have cultural settings which are really hard to reach out and interact with the community as far as for advancing the digitalizations of their saving structure. So these all which fits more around human factor, but they're really contributing to who people will be left behind as far for this digitalization. I'll round up on that. Thanks, Mabel.
Thank you, Innocent, for bringing that very important perspective. Now let's hear from David.
Thanks. I mean, the people who are being left behind are the world's approximately 1 billion adults, so 2/3 of them are women, who cannot read and write the multi-digit numbers that I previously mentioned. They're just simply because that they can't read and write numbers are going to be left out of any digitalization process that doesn't build on iconography or images and visuals to replace text, not to supplement it, but to replace it. Innocent has also very importantly identified the disabled population, and there's things that can be done to improve the interfaces for them too. But for the folks that can't read and write numbers, digital is not better than cash for them. It's very difficult for them to understand numbers presented on a tiny smartphone screen or at a cash in, cash out pay point. Their capabilities in using cash to translate to and understand numbers is simply being undermined by digitalization that employs screens that are generally full of text and abstract symbols. For example, the percentage symbol or a currency symbol, such as the ones used for dollars, aren't really text, they're abstract. So they're not easily relatable and usable by people who can't read and write. So consequently, all these folks are really in my view, are at risk of being potentially defrauded by unscrupulous agents who can exploit their lack of familiarity with things such as place value, that is where you put the zero, the use of the zero. In real life, we really never say I have zero of something, right? So in oral cultures, that is people who conduct their activities orally, zero is a new concept in many ways. And if you don't know where the zero goes, you don't know place value, you're subject to order of magnitudes errors. Instead of getting 1,000, you get 100. And there's other kinds of exploitations that unscrupulous agents can use. And then within your savings groups, where hopefully there's no conscious effort to defraud anyone, there could be mistakes, and it's very hard to protect yourself against those mistakes that can come up in recording. So this is what I think we still have a huge challenge in digitalization to protect the world's 1 billion who are very vulnerable because they can't read and write multi-digit numbers.
Thank you, David. So you have all mentioned different barriers from technological requirements of these platforms, and then lack of access to these resources, connectivity, phones. You also talked about gender norms and power dynamics that are present and can be visible when digitalization of savings groups. You talked about trust, who it's super critical, important for savings groups and for anyone to adopt a new technology. You talked about literacy levels, numeracy levels also. You talked about disabilities and how many platforms are not designed with all of these needs in mind. And you also talked about language. So now, based on your experience and evidence that you've had from your own work or from other service providers, let's talk about how can digitalization of savings groups work for those who have been left behind? No, how can we avoid expanding the gap that is being created by digitalization? What can be done? What has been done, or what should be done? So let's start with Innocent.
Mabel, for that interesting question. So, basing on our experience, we have working with the My Wealth application and the whole digitalization of our saving structure. We have seen digitalization work for those who left behind, but also have noted the digital gap or the divide that's been growing. So, in terms of how digitalization of saving groups can be having several benefits in terms of how we have seen it has been working, we have noted like 3 or 4 factors. One, we have noted quite an increase in access in terms of how these tools been implemented. They really open up more doors for people to have access to formal banking services. But also we have noted how we have been working with the beneficiaries and receiving some testimony in terms of how using these platforms, they really lowered the transactional cost. They don't have to walk a couple of miles of distance again to access formal financial services. They could just access this from traditional agents found within their streets and or using their mobile phone, USSD codes, and so forth. But also another third complementary part I've seen has been working is the financial inclusion aspect. So being able to reach out to all these financial institutions, it open doors to credit access, and it's quite such a major big theme for beneficiaries. And the last one is being the financial education. So we have seen how beneficiaries have been able access to formal financial literacy training, entrepreneurship trainings. So we have a built-in e-learning feature, and we have seen how it's been beneficial in terms of this been working for the saving groups. But in terms of how could we bridge the gap now, what we so far called the digital divide. So we think from the learning assessment we have conducted so far, we identified like main three themes. One is the infrastructure, which is a bit holistic point, which contains a couple of issues around connectivities, around the hardware pieces, smartphones, and so forth, around telecom companies being able to provide stability network. But the whole infrastructure need a bit of an support, advancements, and being to build up to full capacity for this to work. But also affordable technology. So we're trying to work and address communities which are coming from low-income populations. So need to have and work in them with either low-end smartphones, which won't really interfere with much of their income, but being affordable in a sense for them to be able to use. And the third one is literacy and skills, specifically digital literacy and skills. So we have to make sure that these platforms being developed, people have skills to interact with them, they have skills to use them into the benefit, but also make sure the platforms they really make their life more better rather than being redundant and useful in a nature. But also, what could also fill this digital divide is partnerships, and here specifically public and private partnerships, making sure there's a whole of teams and different sectors coming all together to attain this. As digital divide cut across different sectors, we could have governments, NGOs such as ours, telecom companies. So all of these coming together could feed out and.
Oh, I think we lost Innocent. All right. Why don't we hear from David?
Great, thanks. So I think we can make digitalization work for the savings groups that are largely comprised of the folks that I've been talking about, that is the oral population who can't read and write numbers. Cash matters if you're poorly schooled. And so digitalization advocates, we need to recognize that and think about developing digital tools that work for this population rather than really only for those who are literate and numerate. And that fundamental insight that the oral population, oral people, as we call them, can handle cash and use cash to track and numbers in their transactions. We can digitalize by using much more in the way of imagery that makes sense. So we replace words with images, just as we've done with paper-based tools such as passbooks. We have passbooks that don't have a single word of text in them. But yet people can record numbers in them and read numbers in them. So let's use the power of digital to leverage this capability that people have to handle numbers by using cash. And so we can have images of bills. We could, like our cash calculator relies on that to help people do that. And if we do this, it doesn't mean that we have to then get rid of the other apps that are very much already in use for literate people, but rather this could be an overlay that you could click up, hit a switch to change from the text-based to the iconography-based or image-based approach, or anything that we do when we're designing these oral tools under our oral information management approach. We make sure that literate and numerate people can use them too. So basically what I'm saying here is there's now room and there is a need to reach these 1 billion people, and we can do that with digital as long as we go to where they are, which is they live in a world of spoken words and images rather than a world of written words, and that is where I think the field needs to start going if we're going to really reach this huge chunk of vulnerable people.
Thank you, David. Very, very important point and really great ideas. Let's hear from Koen.
Well, I got a feeling there's a lot of optimism about digitalization for financial inclusion, and that's very important, but we should also be very realistic and patient. It's a very complex process, and because it's not about technology, it's about people and technology. We as software providers, we should be humble as well, because we build solutions not for the most excluded people, We just built a solution for people who can already use it. So we have to rebuild and rebuild all over our solution to get more people involved and so that they can use digital savings groups. We have also to focus and to spend more time in training people and support, because one thing is just delivering a solution, a nice box with a smartphone, and the other thing is to make it work. So we should be part of training people, of organizations, even groups, and there should be a help desk. So that's something which has to be rebuilt and improved all over to make this happen and to make this work. So we're just starting. So we should that's important to understand. The second one is, of course, traditional savings groups have their problems, but digital savings groups have their own problems, risks as well, and limitations. So we let people become technology dependent. And what if technology fails? There will be no savings meeting. What if all the data is lost because it couldn't get to the cloud? It was lost before going to the cloud. So these are very important risks, which we should consider as well, and they will happen. So let us not drive out cash. Let us not drive out the traditional savings group. Let us make sure they can coexist peacefully and support them all. So that would be, I think, the best solution for everybody. And the last one is, let us not transform members in products, because of digitalization, there will be a lot of information. We will have a digital footprint of these people, of the savings and loan records, which will be of interest of financial service providers who will pay for it. So at the end, actually, the people will become a product because this information will be traded. People will get access to other loans, individual loans. They will get indebted. Not everybody, but many people. I've seen that in microfinance, so people get over-indebted because everybody wants to give them a loan because they were a very good member of a savings group, and then they get worse off. And they might even channel resources from savings groups to pay off their loans, which they shouldn't have taken from other financial service providers. So that's a risk too. People might leave savings groups because they get access to individual products. So why should I go to a meeting every week if I can get a better loan? So we should be very careful that at the end as well, the ones we include, that some of them will not end up excluded from the system as well because of the process. That's something we should consider as well and take care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Koen. Very important. So to wrap up the discussion, and David, I don't know if you have any thoughts, any burning responding.
Well, I just want to say I really appreciate Koen's remarks, and we should work together, Koen. We should get offline and talk, because I think, yes, digitalization is coming, but there's lots of risks for savings groups. I've just signaled a couple. You've signaled others. I'm sure our audience can suggest many others, and please do send in email comments to us. But I do think that we can't avoid digitalization. It is coming. The question is how to construct it in a way that provides lots of protections and breaks and options to opt out, which there's no reason why those 1 million savings groups cannot continue to operate just fine without digitalization. Where they have had difficulties is their requirements so often to rely on text-based and number-based records that are inaccessible to some of the population. So we still see in our organization that this is a huge frontier. Digitalization, we want to go in baby steps, and the cash calculator is something pretty simple. It's really just a translation device. So it can help, like if you have piles and stacks of 20s and 50s and 100s of whatever currency to count, you can do it. Your colleagues, your fellow members can verify it. So we ought to think about interim digitalization and things where we can do some digitalization, but it has high protective barriers to prevent the kinds of things that Koen was signaling about converting members into products. So I do think that that's a really good way to think about it. How do we prevent members from being products? So that might be our horizon for digitalization. Just go that far. Don't go further. Even going that far would be a big advantage, would improve accurate record keeping. If you don't have confidence in the records of your savings group, you may not want to continue. So what can we do with digitalization that will allow people to build their confidence in their savings groups? And it's partly having paper-based tools that they can understand, but there's a role for things like the cash calculator.
Thank you, David. So yeah, let's bring the focus on people, right? Let's not forget that we are here for them. This is about the people that we work with. Let's better understand the context, no, and what are their needs, and what are their barriers, and what are their interests, and let's design interventions based on that. Koen talked about how important it is to think about this as a process and to always be learning, no? So rebuilding solutions, Koen, you said. Let's go to where people are also, it was said. Let's also recognize when digitalization is not the best option, and let's not leave traditional savings and lending groups behind necessarily, where just let's recognize where this doesn't work. Let's build partnerships, because there's so much we can do together, and based on their strengths of government and other NGOs and other private sector companies. We can work together if we work in partnerships. I really like, David, what you said about interim digitalization, no? So interim solutions. Let's help our communities to move forward by addressing these pressing current needs, like numeracy and literacy skills. So thank you so much. This has been a really great, really short and really great discussion. I'm sure we would all want to stay here longer, but we recognize that there is a limitation on time. So we want to just leave you with this, our contact information. So here are our emails, websites. If you have any questions, any thoughts, any ideas, please contact us. We're really open to continuing this conversation. We also have Innocent's contact information here on the screen if you would like to reach out. Koen?
I was happy to be here. I accept, of course, David's invitation to keep on talking, because actually this is a thing we should build up all together. So there's a lot to learn and to work together. So I'm glad to be here, and you got my commitment.
Excellent. Okay, have a great day, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Look forward to hearing from you.